What's up, everybody? It's Young here with my impressions of Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain. Recently, I was invited to the Metal Gear Solid 5 review event and spent 4 glorious days with the game. For those wondering why I'm calling this video an impressions rather than a review, that's because I didn't manage to finish the game. I got close to the end after over 40 hours of gameplay, but the game is just absolutely massive, and 4 days was still not enough to fully grasp all the game has to offer. So for me to release a review at this point would be premature. Furthermore, I need to record my own gameplay footage, but I'm not allowed to do so until after the game comes out. So you'll have to wait for a few days after launch for my full video review. But in the meantime, here are my impressions of what I've played so far. Let me start out by saying that Phantom Pain might have the best presentation I have seen in a game ever. The intro portion of the game, the enigmatic hospital scene alone, sold me on that fact, which by itself was, for lack of better words, batshit insane. It truly evoked to the player the same emotions of utter confusion and fear that Big Boss was feeling throughout the entire sequence. In fact, after playing through it, I think I actually found myself having more questions than answers. I don't want to spoil anything, but suffice to say that there are still a lot of surprises waiting for you. The hospital scene was not only a head-scratcher and a cinematic masterpiece, it was also a fantastic tutorial for the game's controls. Starting out, I was only able to move my character's head, but slowly, this on-rails stage walked me through the controls and aided me in becoming acquainted with all of the game's basic controls and mechanics, in the same manner that Big Boss was relearning to use his limbs again. After a while, he eventually found the strength to get up on his feet and start moving normally, at which point I was given free rein to experiment with the game's basic mechanics within Cypress's terrifying scenario. From beginning to end, this intro portion was chilling, thrilling, suspenseful, horrific, and most of all, brutal. It was just absolute insanity. Kojima displayed more mastery of the horror and thriller genre in this intro sequence alone than most horror games have shown in their entirety. You are definitely in for a treat. After beating the hospital scene, the game transitioned to Big Boss's first mission in Afghanistan. At this stage, Mother Base had yet to be factored into the equation, so there was no weapons development or field support to take advantage of. Snake was simply given a basic rifle and a tranquilizer pistol, and off he went to save Kaz from Soviet hands. This mission very much felt like the second of 3 stages of a tutorial, this time taking the basic mechanics learned in Stage 1 and applying them to an open-world stealth scenario, all while limiting the player's arsenal so they can focus on getting the hang of Phantom Pain's open-world mechanics. For those who want to know more about this particular mission, I went into full detail in my E3 2015 1 hour of gameplay impressions video, so be sure to check that out. Speaking of mechanics, for those wondering if Phantom Pain's controls feel better than Ground Zero's, I can say without a doubt that they do. Everything just feels tighter, and Snake reacts much more sharply to your input commands, so he ends up feeling less like a tank and more like a nimble fox. One minor addition that I absolutely loved was a new animation that plays when Snake dives from a high place. In Ground Zero's, doing so would result in a rather awkward and very unnatural looking animation, almost as if they hadn't planned for it. But in Phantom Pain, doing so will result in Snake performing a more natural looking version of the classic roll from past games as soon as he makes contact with the ground. I also want to say that things like the marking system and reflex mode are more necessary than ever before. Trust me when I say that the game is difficult enough even with these features activated. Now, you can opt to challenge yourself by deactivating these features, but you will also come to understand why Kojima felt the need to include such features for this particular Metal Gear game. And honestly, I believe that these features make the game all the more interesting and rewarding. The marking system rewards players who take the time to scout the area and makes for a great representation of Snake's ability as a legendary infiltrator to use intel he has acquired through scouting to get an idea for the lay of the land, while reflex mode is a great representation of the incredible senses and lightning-quick reflexes and reaction that come with being a legendary soldier. It all works very well together and it all makes sense. So anyway, after rescuing Kaz, I was finally taken back to Mother Base for Stage 3 of the tutorial, which involved learning how to manage Mother Base. It was a fairly short mission in which I had to navigate through the iDroid, learn how to use Fulton balloons, and interact with the base, none of which was rocket science. I will say, however, that I initially found myself overwhelmed by the iDroid. Most of the game's menus, interface, functionalities, and management options reside within this small holographic device, so it's a lot to take in at first. Once you get used to it though, it becomes fairly intuitive and second nature. After finishing the Mother Base mission, I went to my chopper and into Aerial Command Center, saw that I had unlocked 3 new missions on my mission list, and that's when I truly felt as though the meat of the game had begun. From there, I was free to do main missions and side ops as I saw fit, more of which gradually unlocked as missions and objectives were completed, and most of which took place in Phantom Pain's vast, seamless open world. Prior to being taken to the field, however, after selecting a landing zone for a mission, you will always be taken to what's called Mission Sortie, which is basically a fancy name for the game's loadout menu. From there, you can customize everything from Snake's weapons and items loadout, the support buddy he brings with him, support buddy equipment, any vehicles to be deployed alongside Snake, and more. Customization is definitely one of Phantom Pain's greatest strengths. There are almost infinite ways you can deploy Snake thanks to how jam-packed this game is with weapons, tools, gear, and equipment. It's pretty insane, actually. Once players finish customizing their loadout, selecting Commence Mission will transition players straight into a sequence showing Pequod transporting Snake to a selected landing zone for the selected mission after a brief loading screen. Most mission objectives in Phantom Pain pretty much cycled between assassinating targets, destroying vehicles or equipment, rescuing or extracting POWs, and making contact with certain people or characters, but each mission still played out quite differently and uniquely due to the fact that each of the myriad of outposts in Afghanistan and Africa were designed to be different from one another. They each feature different landforms and landmasses in the surrounding area, different types and layouts of structures and edifices, and different layouts of enemy soldiers. Some outposts were comprised of many structures and edifices, creating a sense of claustrophobia and forcing players to look around every corner before proceeding, while other outposts were very wide open, allowing both parties to have better visibility but also leaving them highly exposed. Each major outpost in Phantom Pain felt like its own level, so while most objectives were similar, methodologies in tackling them varied depending on which outpost was being infiltrated. So similar objectives, but different obstacles and obstacle courses, so to speak, each which can be tackled however the player wishes. And we haven't even talked about the day and night cycle. During the day, you will have great visibility, making it much easier to spot enemy targets and target objectives, but the same advantage will also apply to enemy soldiers. At night, on the other hand, enemies will have much more limited visibility, making it easier for the player to sneak around. But players themselves will also have limited visibility, making it more likely that they will miss 1 or 2 enemy soldiers and things of interest. It's a double-edged sword for both parties in both scenarios, and you will definitely find yourself adjusting your approach to compensate for these factors. As a result, the same missions could play out quite differently depending on the time of day. There is also the fact that each mission has its own story, so despite similar objectives, there were different reasons and motivations at play, giving each mission a different flavor. One final factor that played a major part in keeping the game constantly varied and fresh was Mother Base. Starting out, I had a very limited arsenal to toy around with, which in turn limited the number of ways I could tackle missions. Fortunately, early missions were simple enough to balance out the limited arsenal, but as difficulty quickly ramped up throughout the game's progression, I eventually found myself requiring more advanced tools and weaponry to more efficiently tackle objectives. This is where Mother Base came in. In the field, you will be doing far more than infiltration. You will also have to be on the lookout for soldiers to recruit for your army and resources to gather for the research and development of new weapons and gear, as well as the development of new platforms for Mother Base. Resources bog down to 4 categories: GMP, recruits, minerals, and herbs. GMP is the game's main currency, and it's used in all aspects of research, development, and construction. You gain GMP by either completing missions or by collecting rough diamonds scattered throughout the map. Recruits will act as your virtual manpower. Their main purpose is to level up certain units in Mother Base, and once level requirements are met, new things will unlock. Then we have minerals, which are used a lot in the development of weapons and gear. which are used a lot in the development of weapons and gear. But where you will be spending most of your mineral resources is in the construction of new platforms. Each of Mother Base's units can have up to 4 platforms. With each new platform, the maximum cap for recruits increases, and in turn, so does the maximum possible level for each of your units, making it possible to meet higher level caps that will unlock more advanced equipment. Finally, herbs are used for the medicinal types of items found in the game, so things like phantom cigars, tranquilizer pistols, sleeping gas, enhancement drugs, and more. So bottom line is that if you wish to see your Mother Base and arsenal grow and flourish, you will have to harvest these 4 types of vital resources from the field. That may sound tedious, but I was surprised to find myself somewhat addicted to farming and harvesting resources for Mother Base. I would often find smaller outposts on my way to my objective, housing large containers with minerals, boxes of processed materials, or skillful recruits, and I always felt compelled to infiltrate these outposts to steal them. Overall, it's a system that really encourages scavenging and exploration, as you never know where you'll find valuable resources. And the earlier you begin stockpiling these resources, the better off you'll be in the foreseeable future. I actually found myself playing almost exclusively non-lethally for the first 2 hours or so of the game to recruit anyone I could find. But then, I eventually unlocked and developed the Analyzer, a nifty tool that displays soldier stats through the binoculars. It was at this point that my gameplay style took a major turn. I could now choose which skillful soldier I should spare to recruit and which useless bum I could execute to aid my infiltration. That's when I finally began making more use of lethal weapons like the suppressed MRS-4 rifle in conjunction with my tranquilizer gun to play more like a silent assassin of sorts. I also began carrying with me a sniper rifle just in case the situation called for it. One of the most impressive aspects of the game is that these kinds of shifts in status quo is something that is maintained throughout the entirety of its 50-hour-long main campaign. Just when you think that things are starting to get stale, bam, a new weapon, tool, or upgrade unlocks, offering new conveniences and, in turn, new ways to tackle both old and upcoming missions. Or bam, you find yourself with a brand new support buddy that offers brand new tactical variety and advantages. There are 4 support buddies total, and you have probably seen them all by now: D-Horse, D-Dog, D-Walker, and Quiet. Each offer their own unique set of skills and abilities that are best suited for specific types of playstyles. My personal favorite was D-Dog. His ability to sniff out nearby enemies and POWs as I treaded along proved to be extremely useful and saved me a lot of time, particularly in enemy bases with a lot of obstacles where spotting and tagging enemies can be difficult. D-Dog is also a very silent and efficient close-quarters assassin, so I had a lot of fun doing some cool combination attacks with him. And plus, he's a freaking wolf, how could you not love him? Quiet came at a close second, but I didn't have much time with her, as I felt she could be a liability without suppressors for her sniper rifles, which unlocked quite late in my play session. But she did offer some incredible tactical advantages, and she does a fantastic job of following you around and providing cover as needed. Then there is D-Horse, the first support buddy in the game. He is basically the best form of transportation. He's fast, he's nimble, he's stealthy, he's smart, and he's always right by your side when you call for him. He doesn't offer much in tactical advantages, but having him around is extremely convenient for making quick infiltrations or getaways. Finally, we have D-Walker, who I used very little. His controls definitely take some time to get used to, and he is definitely the most conspicuous of all support buddies. But he's also very flexible and can be applied in both stealth and action scenarios, although I definitely do think he's better suited for action. I didn't get to use him much though, so maybe my opinion will change after spending more time with him. But anyway, the bottom line is that in Phantom Pain, just when you think you've seen everything there's to see, the game will kick you in the balls with a brand new piece of gear or a new gameplay feature that keeps you coming back for more. I can tell that Kojima and company spent a lot of time honing the pacing of Mother Base's progression, as it plays a really vital role in keeping players' attention for the long campaign, and I think they nailed it. It's just slow enough so that the most powerful tools and features don't unlock until the endgame, but just fast enough to feel a constant sense of variety, excitement, and progression. One such unlockable feature is FOB, which is Phantom Pain's online multiplayer component, not to be confused with Metal Gear Online 3. In FOB, there are 2 sides, the attacker and the defender. The attacker's goal is to infiltrate another player's forward operating base and get to the base core that resides at the very top of a platform's main edifice within a 25 minutes time limit, while the defender's goal is to prevent that from happening by either running down the clock or neutralizing the attacker. My hands-on time with this mode was brief and limited, but I was very impressed with what I played. As an attacker, I found that having a human component defending the target base made infiltration a lot more intense and real. Knowing that there was another human on the other side, I found myself being much more careful than normal. As a defender, it was a lot like finding a needle in a haystack, except you have your own troops helping you out. The experience was equally intense, but in a different way. I was surprised by just how slippery the attacking player could be due to Phantom Pain's stealth mechanics. FOB definitely gave off a good first impressions, but it's still hard for me to make a final judgment on the longevity of this game mode. Will bases be varied enough to keep me coming back? Just how extensively and securely can these bases be customized? Will the rewards of playing this game mode be worth it? These are all questions that I can only answer after spending a few more days with the game mode. But so far so good. Something to keep in mind, however, is that if your base gets infiltrated while you're in the middle of a mission and you choose to respond, you will immediately be taken to mission sortie, and then you'll be spawned to your forward operating base, which means that you will have to restart the entire mission you were in from the very beginning. I definitely found that to be a little frustrating. I wish you could just start from your previous checkpoint, but oh well, it is what it is. Alongside its gradual yet constant sense of pacing and progression, something else that Phantom Pain excels at is making each playstyle have their own set of advantages and disadvantages. For example, you would think that playing as a sniper would make this game easy, but it doesn't, which I learned the hard way. If your sniper rifle isn't suppressed, enemies will hear the shot from a very long distance, and they will instantly go on alert. They won't know where you are, but everyone in the outpost they're infiltrating will know that there is an enemy nearby, and they will start moving around to search the entire outpost, making infiltration significantly more difficult. Now, you might be thinking, oh well, I can just pick them off from a distance, it's not like they can see me from so far away. Not true. During alert phase, enemies will be listening for your gunshot. If you shoot again during the alert phase, they will blindly shoot towards the direction of the sound, and they are surprisingly accurate too, forcing you to shift snake to another position. Finally, if they happen to be facing your direction while they are actively looking for you, and you happen to be aiming or shooting your sniper rifle, they may either see the glare reflected from your scope, or they may see the muzzle from your shot, at which point you'll be spotted and reflex mode will activate. Now, things do become easier once you unlock a suppressor for your sniper rifle, which for me happened around halfway through the game. But even then, if you shoot someone and another guard sees him getting shot, if a guard happens to stumble upon a dead body during his patrol routine, or if you miss your shot and the guard you were targeting hears the bullet, they will call it in via radio and raise an alert status. And at that point, it's still possible that they'll see the glare from your scope or the muzzle from your shot. I was truly pleasantly surprised to learn that a sniper style of gameplay can have just as many advantages or disadvantages as, say, a purely CQC style of gameplay. With CQC, for example, there is almost nothing in the game that will counteract close quarters ass-kicking from Snake, but its biggest disadvantage is that you have to get up close and personal to make use of it, which can be quite risky and take a lot of time to execute. Then again, using CQC offers the advantage of being able to move or dispose of a body as soon as the enemy is rendered unconscious, which you cannot do with a sniper rifle from a long distance. And we haven't even talked about the adaptive AI. Perform too many headshots, and guards will start wearing helmets. Do too many missions at night, guards will start wearing night vision goggles. Snipe too much, guards will start wielding sniper rifles as well. So the point I'm trying to make is that the game does a great job of not favoring any particular playstyle. It offers pros and cons for everything. Everything is a double-edged sword, and that's just brilliant. So anyway, back to missions. As I stated before, most missions will be different variations of similar objectives. But the game does also feature its fair share of very unique missions as well. The boss battles in particular are some of the coolest I have ever seen. Trust me when I say, holy shit, you're in for a treat. I don't want to spoil any of it, but I do want to talk a bit about how you encounter them and how they work in an open world environment. Some of them you will encounter out of nowhere. You will be trending along the map, maybe doing a mission or a side mission or something, and you may come across a specific location that triggers a boss battle. Others you will encounter as part of the endgame of a mission, with little warning or build-up. And then there are boss battles that the game builds up to and that you know are coming. Some boss battles even work like in Peace Walker, where a boss battle itself can be an entire mission. So basically, when it comes to how you encounter these bosses, there are a variety of ways, some seamless and unexpectedly, others built up to. There is also a lot of variety in how these battles work in an open world environment. All boss battles still take place in some kind of battle arena, but say for one battle they are no longer sectioned off from the rest of the world map. As a result, you can actually choose to escape most battles if you want. You can also choose to use all the advantages that Mother Base offers, from research and development to field support to aid you in your fight. Now, it's important to keep in mind that for some battles, you can escape and still continue progressing through the mission or campaign, while others do require that players neutralize the target if they wish to progress further into the story. Speaking of story, that's something that I won't be spoiling since that's half the experience right there. But suffice to say that there are lots of cool moments and revelations to look forward to, especially for Metal Gear fans. Yes, it's every bit as crazy and ridiculous as fans of Metal Gear should come to expect by now, but it also paves the way for some really epic scenarios, as well as some truly grim and heartbreaking moments. Now, the story does progress relatively slowly and very gradually for the first half or so of the game, more often than not deepening the mystery rather than solving them. But once it picks up, I'm telling you, it's one hell of a roller coaster ride that you won't want to miss. And for those worried that Kojima might have revealed too much with the trailers, don't worry. The footage shown thus far does a great job misleading you into thinking one way in terms of what's happening, why certain things are happening, and the order of events. So despite how many trailers have been shown, there is still a lot you have not seen and a lot to look forward to. Something else to keep in mind about story is that many developments happen on Mother Base, so you will want to go back there from time to time. You will also want to take the time to sit down and listen to the game's many cassette tapes, which unlock in batches as you progress through the game. They feature both key story elements that paint a clearer picture, as well as some hilarious conversations and behind-the-scenes going-ons that stay true to Kojima's style of humor. And speaking of humor, that's something that is definitely not lost in Phantom Pain, despite its darker tone. Trust me when I say that humor is scattered all throughout the story and gameplay. One last thing to note about Phantom Pain's story is that side ops play a surprisingly vital role in its progression. Most of them are optional, but there are some that are mandatory, others that activate new main missions, a couple that unlock new gameplay features, and there are even some that may seem optional but end up being vital to progression, so if I were you, I wouldn't completely ignore side ops. So overall, I thoroughly enjoyed Phantom Pain's story. Keep in mind, however, that I still haven't finished the game, so I can't really give a final verdict yet, but as of now, it's pretty awesome and it's incredibly presented. I also have to commend the game's voice work, a vital aspect to the game's narrative that blends seamlessly with Kojima's incredible long-shot style cinematography, the Fox engine's powerful graphical capabilities, and some finely crafted soundtracks. Kiefer Sutherland deserves a lot of commendation for his subtle work as Snake, giving off a performance in which he says more by saying less, if that makes sense. Robin Atkin-Downes also delivers a fantastic performance as a really pissed-off Kaz Miller, whose sense of justice and reason has been completely overtaken by his lust for revenge. I also really enjoyed James Horan's performance as Skullface, who was as hammy as he is frightening. Then we have Troy Baker, who delivered a commendable performance as a middle-aged Ocelot, although at times his tone of voice did seem inconsistent, ranging from the gruff Ocelot voice we all know and love to this weird John Wayne voice that would occasionally sneak up on my ears. So a fine performance, but at times inconsistent. The rest of the ensemble does a fantastic job as well. Christopher Randolph brings to life a new and twisted side to Huey Emmerich. Jay Tavare really embraces his role as Code Talker. Stephanie Houston's facial and body capture speaks volumes for the mute character Quiet, and Peter Stubbs' performance as Eli, well, let's just say that you'll be pleased with what you hear. And now onto some negative aspects about the game, which there aren't many of but still warrant mention. My biggest complaint with the game was the amount of time it took to transition from Air Command Center to Mother Base or to the field. The way it works is that players have to board a chopper and enter a separate mini-hub called Aerial Command Center in order to go back and forth between Mother Base and the field. And while I will admit that it's cool and immersive to physically fly off or be dropped off via chopper, the novelty wears off eventually. You are forced to watch Snake boarding or disembarking a chopper every single time, and you cannot skip these 20-second long sequences. Having to wait 20 seconds to go from the field to Aerial Command Center, then another 20 seconds to go to Mother Base, and after finishing my business there, another 20 seconds to go back to Aerial Command Center, and then another 20 seconds to go back to the field became a drag. I get that it's more realistic and it does provide this cool and immersive feeling that you are physically making these long trips to and from an important mission, but without the ability to skip these sequences, they quickly became tiresome. I also have to complain about the inability to seamlessly move between landing zones in the field via chopper. Anytime you board your chopper in the field, you are always taken back to Aerial Command Center. There is no way to skip that step. So say I'm done with a side-op and I want to tackle another one that takes place on the other side of the map. Instead of being able to hop on a chopper, choose a landing zone nearby my next side-op, and seamlessly make my way there without leaving the map, what I had to do was get on the chopper, wait until I'm taken back to Aerial Command Center, then choose the landing zone, and then go into the field. While this process still likely takes less time than traveling long distances by land, it still felt like a drag because there are so many steps involved in achieving one simple task. It's weird because seamless helicopter traveling is something that you can do in Mother Base. When you're in Mother Base, you can hop on your chopper, choose a landing zone within Mother Base, and have your chopper take you there without having to go to Air Command Center first. But for some reason, you cannot do this in the field. Hopefully this is something that can be patched post-release because I think this would really help tremendously with the game's flow. Now, Phantom Pain does feature a fast travel system involving box delivery points, but this system was not really given much explanation, and I really didn't find many delivery points throughout my play session, so I seldom found myself using this feature. However, maybe my concerns will be alleviated once I look into this box delivery point system and once I really learn how to use this feature. We'll see. I was also slightly disappointed by how little interior infiltration there is in Phantom Pain. Apart from that giant villa in Africa, along with a few other smaller edifices sprinkled around, all other missions take place outside. It's not a deal breaker or anything, but I do miss the good old days of infiltrating massive industrial facilities. I was also expecting for there to be more open-world locations other than Afghanistan and Africa, but those are it. Although who knows, maybe the game's ending will surprise me with something new, but as far as I can see, Afghanistan and Africa are the two main open-world locations. One final complaint I have is that the game did get a bit grindy as I neared the endgame. So you know how at one point in Peace Walker you have to find Zadornov over and over again to progress further? Phantom Pain features a more extensive version of that. Fortunately, each of Phantom Pain's grindy side-ops are significantly more fun than playing hide-and-seek with that bastard. But still, it's the same objective over and over and over again, and I did get a bit annoyed as I just wanted to get on with it. So while the game isn't without its minor flaws, I can say with confidence that those 4 days were 4 of the most magical and surreal gaming experiences I've had in recent memory. Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain is the kind of game that comes once every generation. There is simply nothing like it. This is true open-world stealth that is unrivaled by any game or series in its genre. Even after playing this game for almost 4 days, I still feel like I want to play more. I want to go back and re-tackle certain missions to check off all their side objectives. I want to unlock more weapons and gear. I want to further experiment with all the support buddies, and I just want to keep playing. Very few games can hold my attention for this long, and that by itself speaks volumes for just how awesome Phantom Pain is. It's a very easy contender for Game of the Year, and I don't say that lightly. With that, I would like to end my impressions of Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain. Thank you for tuning in. I'll have a true video review out as soon as I feel it's ready, which might not be for a while because of how massive this game is. But in the meantime, if you have any non-spoiler questions about the game that you'd like for me to answer, let me know in the comments below. I'll try to answer as many of these questions as I can on a separate Q&A video. And to be further updated on Metal Gear Solid 5, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.